Welcome back to gaming. Today, I want to dive deep into Ubisoft's current state, because the situation is anything but stable. The company is facing serious challenges, and 2025 could very well determine its future. With massive layoffs, financial struggles, and disappointing game launches, things aren't looking great. But is there still hope? Let's break it all down. 2024 was far from a success for Ubisoft. The company saw 437 publicly reported layoffs, and its stock value took a serious hit. There's even been talk of a potential bankruptcy on the horizon. While it might be too early to make any definitive claims, one thing is clear: the situation is critical. When a company reaches this level of instability, it often leads to major restructuring, unexpected decisions, and a desperate attempt to stay afloat. And when we look at Ubisoft's 2024 lineup, it's easy to see why things went downhill. Let's start with Skull and Bones, a game that had been in development for over a decade. After countless delays, high expectations, and a lot of skepticism, it finally launched, and immediately flopped. The moment it was released, it was obvious that the game had no real future. The gameplay loop was uninspired, the content felt shallow, and despite Ubisoft's promises of long-term support, it's hard to imagine this game gaining traction again. If anything, it felt like Ubisoft was just trying to get it out the door and move on. Then we have Prince of Persia, a franchise that made an unexpected comeback. Twice. First, The Lost Crown, a Metroidvania-style game that was actually fantastic. It had smooth gameplay, beautiful art direction, and a level of polish that many players appreciated. But despite its quality, it failed commercially. The result? Ubisoft disbanded the talented team behind it, which is honestly a massive loss for the industry. To make things worse, Ubisoft also launched the Rogue Prince of Persia, an early access roguelike that arrived way too soon after The Lost Crown. The timing was baffling. Instead of focusing all marketing efforts on a single game, Ubisoft confused players by releasing two completely different Prince of Persia titles in quick succession. It was unclear which one was meant to be the big comeback for the franchise, and in the end, both suffered. This kind of decision-making raises serious concerns about how Ubisoft manages its IPs. And then there's XDefiant. Ubisoft's attempt at creating a competitive FPS was already struggling when it launched, and now it's officially shutting down in June 2025. This is another example of how Ubisoft keeps jumping on trends without a real long-term plan. XDefiant was positioned as a Call of Duty alternative, but with no clear identity, no strong player base, and no long-term vision, it never stood a chance. Of course, one of the most talked about Ubisoft releases of 2024 was Star Wars Outlaws. This was supposed to be a massive win for the company. An open-world Star Wars game should have been an easy success. And yet, it didn't deliver. The narrative was underwhelming, the open world felt empty, and the progression system lacked depth. It's not a terrible game, but it certainly wasn't the groundbreaking experience fans were hoping for. And when you're working with a franchise as big as Star Wars, the bar is set incredibly high. Unfortunately, Ubisoft just didn't reach it. So after all of that, what does Ubisoft have lined up for 2025? The reality is, not much. The only major confirmed release is Assassin's Creed Shadows, coming out in less than a month. And let's be honest, this game carries a lot of weight on its shoulders. Shadows has already faced multiple delays, and with all the controversies surrounding its setting and characters, the pressure is immense. If the game is a massive success, it could give Ubisoft the breathing room it desperately needs to rethink its strategies and stabilize itself. But if Shadows underperforms, that could be the final nail in the coffin. Of course, even if Shadows sells well, let's say it reaches 20 million copies, it still won't be enough to completely fix Ubisoft's financial situation. But it might buy the company some time. Time to restructure, time to rebuild trust with its audience, and time to figure out what comes next. For a company that used to dominate the industry with its strong lineup of games, this lack of direction is alarming. At the core of all of this is a simple but devastating issue: Ubisoft has lost its identity. There was a time when Ubisoft had a clear creative vision. Whether it was their innovative AK franchises or smaller, experimental games like Child of Light and Valiant Hearts, you could tell what Ubisoft stood for. They had a recognizable style, a philosophy that players could trust. But in recent years, they've been chasing trends instead of creating them. They've tried to jump into Battle Royale, live service games, competitive shooters, open-world RPGs, and more. They've thrown everything at the wall to see what sticks. But instead of finding a new successful formula, they've ended up diluting their brand. They own some of the most beloved IPs in gaming, yet they haven't managed to properly capitalize on a single one in the last 5 years. And that's the real tragedy here. Ubisoft has the potential to be one of the best game publishers in the industry, but potential means nothing if you don't know how to use it. So, what does the future hold? Right now, all eyes are on Assassin's Creed Shadows. This game will either prove that Ubisoft can still produce high-quality, successful titles, or it will confirm that the company is on a downward spiral with no clear way out. I really hope Shadows delivers, because as much as I've criticized Ubisoft in this video, I want them to succeed. I want them to return to the company that gave us some of the greatest gaming experiences of the past 2 decades. For now, I'll leave you with the latest Assassin's Creed Shadows gameplay footage. Let me know in the comments what you think. Can Ubisoft turn things around? Or is it too late? And as always, play, explore, and enjoy every moment. See you in the next one.